1. So this all happened in the wee hours of last night. My fiancée and I are both front desk, but it was her shift. I just go to hang out sometimes. My fiancée is fine and sleeping soundly beside me. Last night I went down to walk the property with my fiancée. The manager of the motel called her while we were dealing with a similar situation. People on property that weren't supposed to be there, telling her that he heard someone by the pool. We look at the cameras and some drunk dude had climbed the fence of the pool because it was locked. We go confront them and tell them they need to get out. There were 2 drunk people with them as well. Since they violated the contract that every guest signed, she was trying to get the room number. They kept refusing as they walked away, and she called the cops. The dude who jumped the pool fence decides it's best he leaves, so he hops in his car and drunk drives off the lot. Meanwhile, my fiancée and I keep walking behind the other 2, and they walk off the property and into the gas station parking lot. Before I go on, I should mention that I had seen these 2 earlier, and I just so happened to see the car that they got into. When the cop got here, she asked what was going on. We gave the story up to that point, and I pointed their car out and my fiancée described them. She found them and we locked their room down. Cop comes back and says because he has a room here, he can't be CT'd. Apparently trespass laws here are weird. So we walked to the back and the dude got belligerent, started calling names and yelling at her. He crossed the line and I told him that he needed to back off. So he directs his attentions to me, calling me names and yelling. At one point, he talks about how he's a veteran and weaponizes it saying, "You ever served y'all's country? Nah, I can tell. Y'all probably voted for Biden. Y'all look like Biden supporters." We get back to the office and my fiancé had already revoked his stay and printed a receipt minus damages. Drunk guy with him flipped pool tables. He went irate and started threatening to sue and asking our names. Neither of us gave him our name. Finally, he walks out of the office after calling us 5 more names apiece minimum and goes to the back. We watched the cameras because we told him once he calmed down we'd let him into his room to get his shit and get out. So what's this guy do? He calls the cops back out. They come and ask us why he's not being let back into his room, and we re-explain everything. So I ask on a whim if they'd stand by so he doesn't try anything dumb. That finally works and this guy gets his stuff and the female with him drives him out of there. We headed back to the office to try calm down, and as I'm getting ready to head back to the room, it's getting to be about 2:30, I went down at midnight. We start hearing screams and yelling from up above the office. We turn around and look up to the balcony, all rooms are accessible from outside, and see a naked woman grabbing another woman's purse and trying to get it from her. My fiancé yells up asking what's going on, and the naked chick threatens to beat her up. We go up to console the chick who was apparently naked and Crazy's girlfriend, who informs us that the naked chick may try to kill herself. I ask her if she wants me to have PD do a welfare check, she agrees, and I start to call non-emergency as I start down the stairs. I hear the crazy chick come back out. I jump back up the steps and see her charging my fiancé with a knife. Through a series of bad footwork, I'm unable to get around her to deter the threat. She runs into my fiancé, narrowly missing her with the blade, and the girl gets hit with gel-based pepper spray my fiancé carries when she walks the property. As soon as the first bit hit her face, she threw her arm up, and the gel splashes back on my fiancé and gets in her eyes, and on her hand and arm. I grab her and pull her back because the chick tried to wild swing and I got her out of the way, guide her down the stairs, get her to the office to rinse her face, the whole time on the phone with 911, and run back to make sure the chick doesn't move. She got down on her stomach because of the pain and didn't budge. The cops and EMS show up, get my fiancé and drunk chick help to get the pepper spray taken care of. Drunk chick we think had a semi-allergic reaction because of how intense her screams were and for how long she was screaming. My fiancé gets the spray out of her eyes and within 10 to 15 minutes was pretty much fine. She fills out a report and presses assault charges on her, and they arrest her. The entire situation took just under an hour and a half to resolve. I was down there until 4:30 a.m. All in all, I feel bad for the drunk girl's girlfriend, because from the time we started this situation to the time she got in her car to drive away, she was crying. I talked with her a bit, as police and EMS were doing their thing. This isn't the first time that this happened, and isn't the first time she's legit feared for her life. When she was talking to the police, my fiancé overheard her saying something about trying to get back with her later down the road. I can't understand the mentality, but I won't judge. I'm fortunate that I hadn't gone back to the room, as I don't know what would have happened with the second situation and my fiancé. I'm honestly just glad she's safe. 2. When I was a night auditor, it was a joke that I was a problem magnet. Not in any way I could control. You know, there's always that coworker that says, "Why do I get all the assholes?" But it's just because they don't know how to talk to guests or de-escalate a situation. It wasn't that I got more jerks, it was just that if something absolutely batshit was going to happen, chances were it would be during one of my shifts. I'm just that lucky. This particular night was probably one of the worst. I'd only just gotten on shift, it seemed quiet, lobby wasn't too full, not many check-ins to worry about. Was looking forward to a nice, chill shift, and then suddenly the tender that was closing up the bar calls me and tells me to get security up front right now. Because she just saw someone get into a physical altercation in the elevator. The elevators are glass and we have an open atrium layout, so you can see into them the whole way up from the bar, but not the desk. I radioed the guard, and at first he was annoyed because he was using the restroom. But when I clarified that I needed him for an actual assault, he was on point. Normally, I was calling him to get someone towels. I don't blame him for being a little frustrated at being interrupted while taking a piss. By the time he got up there, though, the woman who had been part of the altercation was coming back down, without the guy who had attacked her. When she was back in the lobby, we got the story out of her. Apparently, she'd been talking with the guy at the bar, and had either agreed to go up to his room with him but then changed her mind, or just got in the elevator at the same time, but intending to go to her own room. She wasn't very clear. Either way, when the guy got the message that she wasn't getting off the elevator with him, he tried to physically drag her out the door. She managed to stay in the elevator, but he did rip her purse off her. He then apparently stepped a few feet away from the door, placed the purse on the ground, and dared her to take it back. She declined, and then came back down to the lobby purseless. She was very shaken, but at that point mostly worried about getting her purse back. I don't really blame her for this. Shock does weird stuff to you. By now, a few other guests who had seen what happened were at the desk. The woman insisted she didn't want to call the police. My security guard agreed to go up to the room and see if he could get her belongings back. It wasn't hard to figure out which room, as the tender remembered him from the bar, and he had charged his drinks to his incidentals rather than paying cash. Fortunately, problem guests are rarely the brightest crayons in the box. As soon as the guard left to go to the room and the woman went back into the lobby, one of the other guests told me that if I didn't call the cops, he would, because regardless of her thoughts, he didn't want to be in a hotel with this man. I told him I had exactly no problem with calling the police and did so right then. The guard came down with the purse shortly after. Apparently the guy had answered the door, had tried to claim he didn't have any purse, to which my guard replied, "Dude, it's on the coffee table behind you. I can literally see it. Just hand it over." Unable to argue with that logic, the purse was indeed handed over, presumably because the guy thought it would avoid a call to the police. However, they show up just a little while later. We give them the above rundown, pointed at the lady in the lobby, and gave them the room number. With her purse returned, she apparently refused to cooperate with the officers, who tried to have her confirm the story. No idea why, but luckily the other witnesses saw enough for them to make up for that, and they deemed it appropriate to go up to the room. They didn't want any of the staff with them. Not sure precisely what went on, but about 20 minutes later, the guy was brought down in cuffs and with a torn shirt. and it doesn't seem like he exactly cooperated either. Apparently, they found some very concerning stuff in his room that indicated to them he probably didn't intend the woman to leave it once he had her in there. But even with that information, she refused to have anything to do with any charges. I hope that didn't keep the shithead out of jail. But I don't know what became of him after he was put in the back of the squad car. So crisis over, right? Finally time to get the audit going, yeah? Nope. A couple cops were hanging around, just getting final statements from everyone, when suddenly 2 women came sprinting in through the front door. They went straight to the cops and started talking a mile a minute. I didn't catch much at first and thought that they were concerned friends of the lady who had been attacked. Again, nope. Turns out they were entirely unrelated to the preceding events. They had a friend who had been acting off for a while, and tonight had sent them several concerning texts. They had tried to go to her house, but she wasn't there. So apparently, they then just started driving around to random hotels seeing if they could find her car. Seriously, everyone should have such friends. Apparently, they found it in our parking lot. The officers came up to me and said the text did look concerning enough that they were willing to do a welfare check. I bent the rules a little. Obviously, I'm not allowed to even confirm whether or not a guest is staying with us to anyone without their permission, and gave them the room number with the caveat that the friends absolutely could not know what that number was. They agreed, and we made the women stay at the front desk so they could see what floor the elevator went to. They had no issues with this arrangement, which honestly lent credence to their sincerity. A few minutes later, we got a call from the room. It was the police. They said they found the woman in the room, mostly responsive, but having obviously consumed quite a lot of prescription pills very recently. Ambulance was already en route. So another 20 minutes later, we were filling out more incident reports while this lady was wheeled out on a gurney. I finally got to start my shift duties around 3:30, and I still got everything done. Night audit is a whole different animal than day shift, I swear. 3. After my husband was laid off from his job as a server during the pandemic, I got myself a job at the local hotel as their night auditor. You see a lot of interesting things on a night audit shift in my small town, but the night I'm going to tell you about takes the cake. So my usual pre-shift routine was going to the coffee shop across the street from the hotel I worked at. We'll call it Swiss Sis. I'm in the drive-thru line chatting with the employees that worked there as I waited, when I looked over to my property and saw an ambulance, fire truck, fire marshal, and police sergeant cars in the parking lot. At this point I'm thinking, crap, what in the fresh hell am I about to walk into? I finish getting my coffee and head across the street to the property, parking in one of my usual spots. My usual pre-work routine is to sit in my car for at least 2 cigarettes before heading in, but due to the obvious emergency situation that was going on, I decided to skip them and head in to find out what was going on and provide backup, if needed, for the front desk employee that was currently on shift. Getting inside, none of the emergency responders were visible, so I headed behind the desk, alerted Cheryl that I was there, and asked her what was happening. She told me she didn't really know. All she knew so far was there was an emergency on property and nothing had been told to her yet. At this time of night, no managers were on property, so it was pretty easy to understand how information could be missed. I clock in early and help her out a little before she has to go to the bathroom. She finds out on her way what was going on, and one of the guests staying on the first floor had passed away in his sleep. The wife of the guest was talking with the emergency responders and trying to take care of the matter at hand. Cheryl ended up clocking out at the end of her shift, and the night started. It was a sad situation all around, but work had to continue. As I'm manning the desk, a woman walks around the corner from the hallway on the first floor, barging up to the desk looking a little angry, and the following conversation happened. "You need to move the people in room 112. They're making all kinds of noise, laughing and throwing a party in the hallway." Hearing this lady in the room she mentioned, I may have dropped my customer service fake for a moment, because the room she mentioned happened to be the room that was harboring the recently deceased. "Ma'am, I apologize for the noise, but I can assure you it isn't a party, and that room would be impossible to move at the moment. My husband and I are trying to sleep. We've been driving for 16 hours, and This is really inconsiderate of them, and you for not doing something about it. Y'all, I can't even tell you. Even with how short the conversation had been, how hard it was to fight back the urge to go at this woman. But I managed it, and tried to continue on as professionally as possible with her. I'm sure you guys are very tired, and if you don't mind, we aren't full tonight, and I'd be able to move you and your husband to a different room if you wouldn't mind the move. That's not going to work for me. If you aren't going to move the room, I will take care of it myself. That said, this woman walked away from the front desk and back down the hallway. I guess while I wasn't paying attention, this woman had the audacity to approach the recent widow and tell her she needed to move herself and her party to a different room. The widow, as well as her family, that was close enough to come support her during this difficult time, proceeded to go off on the woman, rightfully so if you ask me. The issue with that is the woman then came back up to the front desk, damn close to tears, to beg me to move them. We can't change rooms because my husband is already sleeping. It's been a long day, and we've driven all day, and I just want to get to sleep. I don't care what's going on in that room, but it's your job to take care of it and put an end to that group's noise. I was flabbergasted by her behavior for this matter, knowing she had been told by the widow what was actually going on, and she was still pressing me to move them away from her room. There was another guest standing behind her while this was all going on, who looked less than impressed by the situation at hand as they waited patiently to check in. Finally, I looked at this woman like I was looking at my teenage son, mustering the best mom voice I could and the tone to match it. Ma'am, that woman's husband just passed away. You went over to her as emergency responders were moving in and out of her room and demanded that she move, because you and your alive husband were trying to sleep. I will gladly move you to a new room, but moving them to a new room is something that I cannot and will not do at this time. This lady actually started to cry. Tell me I didn't care about the guests in the hotel and stormed away from the front desk. It was at that moment that what little faith I had left in humanity was sucked out of me. This was by far the most obnoxious guest I have ever dealt with in this industry. And to top it all off, she left a review about her stay, once again trying to play victim in this situation. 4. For a bit of background, I've been doing various night audits for the past 8 months, exclusively at cheaper motels in the not best areas, so I have a lot of stories to tell. And to start, I'll give a Karen tale. At the time I was working 12-hour shifts, 7 p.m. to 7 a.m., so I got to deal with a variety of people. This day was no different, just a normal, unremarkable day for the first few hours. But a bit later on, I'd say around 10:30 p.m., in walks the star of the show, Miss Karen. With the trademark hair and her already being angry, I knew I was in for a long one that night. Good evening, ma'am. Do you have a reservation? Yeah. I wouldn't be here if I didn't. Can you just give me the room keys? No, you need to check in, pay, and sign a few papers before I can give you the keys. Eventually, I pull up her reservation and get everything ready, and it's time for the ID and card. The only problem is her ID doesn't match the credit card at all. Ma'am, I can't accept a card if it doesn't have your name on it. It's to ensure we don't get anyone using stolen cards. Oh, it's my mom's card. She's out in the car and she's letting me use it, so it's fine. Alright, can you have her come in and show me her ID so we can get you to your room? I just drove all the way from Idaho and she's tired. She doesn't have to come in. Just accept the card. I'm sorry, ma'am. It's company policy that we can't accept cards without an ID matching the card. She then proceeds to reach into her very large purse and pull out a few $100 bills, which she then balls up and throws directly into my face. Well, here, take cash then. I just need to go to bed. We do take cash, but we still need a card on file in case of incidentals. She then storms off back to her car, and a sweet old lady comes in and shows me her ID, and I finish the check-in. But that is not the end of the tale, no, for she is still in the motel, and I have 8 hours left in my shift. Later on that night, about 1 a.m., someone rings a bell a bunch of times. I'm in the back folding laundry, So I come to the front and see Miss Karen holding in her hands a phone from the room that was torn out of the wall. "Good evening, ma'am. How can I help you?" "My phone isn't working. Give me a new one. And stop calling me ma'am. I have a name." "What is your name, ma'am?" I'm searching around the front desk for spare room phones at this point. "You know my name. You checked me in." "I've checked in 10 other people since you. I don't remember your name, ma'am." I then go into the back to see if there's a spare phone there, since there is none at the front. "Wow, are you really leaving? Can I not have a phone?" "I'm looking for a phone, ma'am. There are none at the front desk." "Stop calling me ma'am." I return with the phone. "What would you like me to call you?" "My name." "I don't remember your name. Now, what room are you in?" "I need to make a note that you got a new phone." "You know what room I'm in. You know who I am. Why are you lying? Can I speak to your manager?" I'm looking through the computer and flipping through the paper check-in notes to find out what room she's in. "Oh, ma'am, it's 1 a.m. She's asleep." "When does she get in? I need to talk with her about how badly you're treating me." I'm still looking for the room number. Depends on the day. I can't really say when she will be in, but generally she shows up around 8 a.m. when she does work. "Also, are you in room 237? "See? I knew you knew who I was this whole time." She then snatches the phone angrily and storms off to her room. Rest of the night is fairly slow. I set up the meager breakfast and finish folding all of the laundry, but at 6 a.m., who comes to the lobby but Miss Karen? "How can I help you?" "You can't. I'm waiting for your manager." "Like I told you earlier, she makes her own schedule and might not even be in today." "I'll wait." And so she waited in the lobby for the next few hours. Luckily, by that point, I only had an hour left. So I was out of there and told Day Shift, who also did 12 hours, what the situation was. I was told the next day that she demanded a full refund and threw a big temper tantrum to Day Shift, thinking they were the manager, and got angry when Day Shift said they weren't. Eventually, the manager did hear about it, and nothing happened. 5. So I was going into work, expecting a hard day. I was working alone with 60-plus check-ins, and it was yet another kids' sports team. Not great, but not a disaster. Then a storm started that knocked out our power about 20 minutes after I got there. Thankfully, it came back on, and I thought it was the end of that. Boy, was I wrong. So a little while later, I got a call. Someone's TV wasn't working. No big deal. I know how to fix most TV issues, and at the time I had rooms just in case I couldn't. I went in and they had no signal. I tried everything I knew how to do, to no avail. Disappointing, but not out of the ordinary. I moved their room and that was that. A few minutes later, they called from their new room and said it still wasn't working there. Then the deluge came. Phone calls, 2 or 3 or 4 at a time for the rest of my shift, complaining about the TVs not working. Apparently, the storm knocked out the cable and everyone was mad. I kept trying to do what I could, but I was interrupted every few minutes by people complaining or asking when it was going to be back on. This was on top of not only all the check-ins we had before, but there was a surge in reservations because the power went out for a lot of people in the local area. We went from pretty busy with a comfortable number of rooms to sell to oversold before I could do anything about it. What broke me was when I got a phone call from someone asking a question about the hotel because she was going to make a reservation. I told her that we were sold out, and it turned out the central reservation line was on the call too, and could hear the conversation. I told him this information was wrong and we were already oversold. He responded with, "No, I can see you have 3 rooms. Here, I just made the reservation." When I told him he was overselling us, he told us I had to walk her. The guest then demanded I find her another hotel nearby while she was still on the line. Again, nothing I mentioned before having been resolved. This was still all going on the whole time. I called around for her and the other people I had to walk, but literally every hotel I called was full. By the time I finally left, my night audit person had taken over and was trying to find rooms too. I tried to help, but my hands were shaking so much from stress and low blood sugar, she just told me to go home. Being hypoglycemic didn't help either. I ordered takeout that night, but didn't get to eat until 10, and that was only because one of my managers came in and saw I was a broken mess and basically told me to eat. It was just a bad day for everyone involved. One guy managed to drop his credit card where it was almost impossible to get it. Here's hoping tomorrow is better, and if the guy from the Central Reservation line is hearing this, I hope someone makes your favorite book or series into a movie, and it's the same level of quality as The Last Airbender. Hey everybody, Hellfreezer here, and thank you very much for listening to Coahw, episode 91. And thank you very much to everybody who allowed me to use their stories in this video. If you enjoyed the video, then I'd appreciate it if you gave it a like and shared it around with all your friends and family. Okay, this video brings us to Thursday as of its original upload. Okay, let's see. Before we go, let's have Hellfreezer's question of the day. And that is, what is something that you know you should do that is beneficial to you, and you should do it more often, but you have to kind of bully yourself into wanting to do it? In my case, I'll give you two examples in my case. It's quite simply getting out of the house and walking around a little more, or cooking food from scratch instead of doing the convenient thing and just, throwing something in the air fryer or the oven or whatever. I do like cooking, but I've just got to force myself to do it, which is probably what I'm going to do after I record this. Your answers may not be food related. Okay, and with that, I'm going to head off for now. So until next time, thank you very much for listening, and take very good care of yourself.